Hey, it's Jordan with TYT Network. It is Thursday, April 21st. I'm here in Long Island, and we're going to be talking about the New York election lawsuit, which I've been covering at length. I am here with the lawyers who filed the lawsuit on primary day, Tuesday, on behalf of Election Justice USA, which is an advocacy group against the New York Board of Elections. Let me flip the camera around for you. All right. So we have Blaire Fellows and Jonathan Clark, and you guys filed a lawsuit Tuesday, an emergency injunction, and the case was not dismissed outright. You were given a later court appearance date, which is at the end of April, to do a whole lot of logistical things that sound kind of like a nightmare. I don't envy you. Catch us up on from Tuesday to today. What you've been doing and what the next steps are.
Yeah, so right now what we've done is we've amended the complaint. The judge wanted us to amend the complaint to include all the counties that we think the violations had occurred in. So right now we have the New York City Board of Elections added to the complaint along with the Brooklyn County Board of Elections. We're going to start moving to Nassau and Suffolk to amend it to have them as well. We're not sure if we're going to go upstate yet because we've heard some sort of reports of violations, but it hasn't been as overwhelming as the downstate.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, since Tuesday, I know you guys have received a lot of heat. I certainly have received a lot of heat. Before we get into more details, obviously Hillary Clinton won New York State by 16 points. So the goal of your lawsuit is not that you think so many voters were purged that, you know, you're trying to get provisional ballots counted and it would, or, you know, Bernie Sanders would win. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what you're saying. But the fact of the matter is, to my knowledge, there hasn't been this kind of purge in New York or in New York City that I know of ever. And the New York Attorney General, the New York City Board of Election Director, their reasoning and defenses have been kind of subpar. Michael Ryan, who's the New York City Board of Elections director or executive director, basically said no one was disenfranchised. There was no more polling issues than normal, and of the over 100,000 people purged in Brooklyn in particular, he said 70% of those were made inactive because they hadn't voted in 2 general elections. I find that hard to believe. What do you think about that, Blaire?
Well, I find his statements to the press made on Tuesday interesting. Michael Ryan said that he has not updated the rolls in New York City since November, which is in direct violation of New York election law 5-402, which says that each local board of elections must keep an...
Hold on. You're a New Yorker. Talk a litlittle slower. 5-what?
402.
Okay.
5-402, which says that each local county board of elections, which includes the boroughs, must keep an updated list of purged voters. And that list must be updated every single month. And it has to be readily available on a computer database or in alphabetical order. Additionally, there are laws that New York has to follow that say that the local boards of elections have to keep the purged voter roll list for 2 years. So
there are also laws that they have to inform voters that they've been purged, correct?
And we've received no notice that our plaintiffs and our witnesses have received this confirmation notice, and that is according to New York election law. If you were going to put a voter in inactive status, that voter has to receive a letter from the New York State Board of Elections giving them essentially 14 days to respond to keep their voter status active.
Right, but Blaire, maybe you can help me. I think Michael Ryan said that he did send out notices, but a lot of times, since a lot of people in Brooklyn live in apartment buildings, he just sent it to the general address of the apartment building and didn't put apartment numbers on it where they lived, like C2 or C3, and a lot of these bounced back, and he inactivated them anyway.
But also, I mean, anecdotally, before I worked at the Young Turks, I moved 6 times in New York City. How do we know that if it was sent to the right place, the person still lived there? I mean, you're talking 70, I'm not good at math, but 70% of 120,000 purge voters, it's a lot of people. It's a lot of people who nobody's coming out saying, "Oh, gee, I just didn't see my letter."
Right.
What do you think about Ryan? We're not saying he's intentionally lying or anything like that, but it's obvious that there was incompetence. I mean, most people were not informed that they were moved off the rolls.
Yeah, well, he's actually spinning it. That's what he's trying to do, is trying to put a good face on it. But this also doesn't account for the fact that there was a lot of new people that registered to vote. So why is it still dropping? Every county almost throughout New York State has increased Democrats except for Brooklyn. And I mean, you and we were in Brooklyn yesterday, and it seemed pretty heavily Democratic. I didn't see the influx of Republicans that changed the balance there. I don't really understand it.
But also, Brooklyn in particular, she won by 20 points. So again, regardless of over 100,000 purged, it's no guarantee that if all those Democrats were able to be on, she could have gotten quite a lot of votes from that too. So we're not saying that Bernie would have won, but it's interesting to me that Brooklyn, a very big area in New York, it's a big borough, which is kind of like a county, had all this purging go on. Brooklyn has a lot of is growing to be more young. Williamsburg areas, Greenpoint, Dumbo, a lot of young people. It's also where Bernie Sanders was born. He had almost 30,000 people before the election. I forget which park I think it was Prospect Park. Does reason stand if these people were not purged in Brooklyn that you're not you're not polling experts, but the gap between Clinton and Sanders might have closed?
I would say so. 120,000 votes could flip just about any election in New York State. So that obviously there's anomalies here that could change an election. And I think it's just very unfortunate that the government's not taking this more seriously. And this is the reason we have such low voter turnout in New York and such high voter apathy, is because of things like this. And then we have political grandstanding by the Attorney General, the Comptroller. The Comptroller wants to investigate this, but it doesn't really have the authority to investigate it. So that's confusing.
I want to get to that. I had a little thing this morning. So the Comptroller is Scott Stringer, I believe his name is, and the Attorney General is Eric Schneiderman. Again, I'm not saying that Hillary Clinton is involved in this. There's no evidence of that. If there becomes evidence of that, hopefully I break that story. I'm getting a lot of hate on Twitter, this and that. This is just sour grapes and all that. I'm actually not really reporting this to try to win the election for Bernie. That's not really my interest. I just think it's a huge story that we know of over 100,000 people couldn't vote. And we all have biases, whether it's lawyers, journalists. My brother called me on voting day and said, "What the fuck is going on? I can't vote." And he's not even that politically active. So that's just anecdotally what's going on. But, okay, so the Comptroller, to my knowledge, is in charge of finances, taxes, this and that. He's, quote, auditing the New York City Board of Elections, whatever that means. He is a delegate for Hillary Clinton. The Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, was a member of Hillary Clinton's New York Election Leadership Council, which is basically a bunch of elected officials who signed their names to her team and went out and campaigned for her. So I reached out to the Schneiderman office today, the Attorney General, and said, how do you have credibility, quote unquote, investigating the Board of Elections in New York City when, you are connected to Hillary Clinton? They gave me 2 no comments, and then when I pushed, they said, no, there's no conflict of interest. You guys are from New York, you're familiar with the New York politics scene. What are your thoughts on no conflict of interest for him and also the Comptroller, who was just elected as a delegate for Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, well, that actually is kind of interesting. When Blaire and I were in court and we were arguing this case, at some point I turned to the representative of the Attorney General and I said, theoretically we should be on the same side on this. And I even said I told Blaire, and we should have said to the judges, this is not an adversarial proceeding. The New York State Attorney General is supposed to protect civil rights, so why don't we come to a solution here? But the Attorney General just sort of giggled when he heard that, and he went on to defend.
To be clear, Schneiderman, the Attorney General, wasn't in court.
No, it had been one of his deputies.
Right.
So the Attorney General, to me, he seems like he's trying to ride both sides of the fence on this, and this seems like a publicity stunt for him as well. And Scott Stringer, I still fail to see how the Comptroller is going to do anything about this. What are they going to call in the Board of Sanitation next to audit it? It just doesn't make any sense. Each agency within the city has their roles, and Stringer doesn't have the power to investigate this.
And also them auditing, the New York City Board of Elections does not have any chance of actually changing any result. The only chance to change results is your lawsuit that, if it is ruled in your favor, would count provisional ballots.
Absolutely. I don't see anything coming out of the comptroller's office that's going to change an election at all. Obviously, there's problems with boards of elections. There's problems with so many corrupt things we have in New York. We can't fix that through our lawsuit, but hopefully this shines a light on some of that.
And I think what would be important, I was tweeting back and forth with Chris Hayes of MSNBC last night. He's actually, from Brooklyn. And he made the point, she won by 20 points. How do we know that if this purge happened, it really would have helped? Maybe she would have gotten more votes out of it, which is a good point. But we don't know of that purge what the predominant ages of those people were who were purged. We also don't know how many people filed or voted with provisional ballots. When are we going to know that information?
Well, that's going to be a hard thing to find out, because that's what we're going to court on April 29th to see if the judge will let us get any what's called discovery, where we'll find this out. And with Chris Hayes, our elections are based on security, not hypotheticals. So I kind of reject anything he would say outright. When we get an election result, we want to know that's the election result, not, oh yeah, maybe he would have done better or maybe she would have done better. It's just everybody wants to know what happened, and that's what democracy is, that it's secure, that your vote counted, and not, oh yeah, maybe if you wouldn't have voted something possibly. That's not democracy.
Well, we also know that regardless of Bernie versus Hillary, we've seen in recent history, elections could be determined by 100, a couple hundred votes, 2,000, if not for the Supreme Court, and it's a whole other story I won't get into. A couple hundred votes, more importantly, a couple 100,000 votes, could definitely change the gap in delegates, which could ultimately change the gap if a Hillary Clinton or a Bernie Sanders wins the nomination. Right. So the fact is, Brooklyn, I don't live in Brooklyn, but I do know there are a lot of areas that are very young. And based on the protests you saw yesterday, let me ask you, Blaire, there were protests outside the Board of Elections in Brooklyn, about 75 people. Obviously, this is a small sample size, but you were mentioning most of them were young.
Yes, most of them were certainly under the age of 35 years old.
And they were purged.
A lot of them were purged, and they had stories of friends, family who were purged. And beyond that, there was a letter sent to Brooklyn residents from the Board of Elections that we served yesterday on 345 Adams Street. And the letter that was sent out to, I don't know what demographic of Democrats got this letter, but there are reports on social media saying that the primary is in September, and they noted this as a correction. That added some confusion, and that letter was sent a couple of weeks ago.
So there was a letter sent out a few weeks ago to, we don't know how many people, that issued a correction, which was incorrect, saying that the primary is in September.
Correct.
Which, who knows how many people got that and didn't come out as a result?
Exactly.
And just from my own personal experience the last few days, not that New York is the only incompetent state, but Election Justice USA, as well as you guys, were urging those who feel they were wrongly moved off the rolls to go vote by provisional ballot. But I got a lot of tweets and emails from people who went to their local polling stations and were told there's no such thing as provisional ballots. So it seems like whatever the saying is, one hand doesn't know what the other is doing or whatever. Right. It seems like local polling people who we were talking before, a lot of them are senior citizens, retired, don't particularly know how to instruct people properly.
That's the thing, you have people that come to do this maybe 2 times a year. We have a primary and a general, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, and they don't really understand what's going on. They're not attorneys, they don't know the law, they're not instructed well. So that's obviously, you're not going to get the best information from these poll workers. And a lot of them, they just don't really care. They want to see you leave the polling place so they can move on. And that's the reports that we've been getting from a lot of people. I think Blair mentioned there's a lady out in East Hampton.
Francesca.
Right. Yeah. Maybe you can tell what she was a poll worker.
Francesca, we're going to be speaking with her later on today. So hopefully at a later date you can join forces with her and have an interview. But we are urging poll workers to go to Election Justice USA, put in the subject line, poll worker, and share your story of what happened at your precinct. Election Justice USA saw this coming. We had counts of voter purges for the past couple of weeks. We filed this lawsuit on Monday to give notice to voters to go vote in provisional. We did not give the advice for independents to go, and we weren't suggesting that this was going to be an open primary.
Yeah, but we would hope that the poll workers would give wind of the suit and be able to advise accordingly. But that didn't seem to happen, did it?
No.
And I just want to get back to Attorney General Schneiderman. I don't really cover like New York politics that closely, but the bottom line is, in court, his deputy or whomever was there said, we don't have the authority to investigate county by county. The next day, he opens an investigation. When I called his office this morning, he says, not him, but his spokesperson, I think his name was Eric, said, well, what we meant was we don't have the authority to investigate county by county poll stations, but we do have the authority to investigate civil rights violations. Is that doublespeak? What do you think about that?
It's a distinction without a difference. I think that when we first filed this, they just thought that it would blow over. And then when they saw how much it exploded, I think Schneiderman saw an opportunity to get some press, and that's really what he's jumping on. I think when you see covered by ABC, they don't mention a lawsuit a lot of times, but they mention Stringer and Schneiderman. So I mean, this is,
and they don't mention that their ties to Hillary Clinton.
Right, and it's very disturbing. So I mean, it has the dual benefit for them is they get publicity from it, and the surest way to never get a result is to get it caught up in a government agency, and that's pretty much what it's going to do. If they get involved in this, they're just going to delay it, and they're not looking for any positive result from it.
So let's get down to the nitty gritty. Your next court appearance is the 28th or the 29th?
Was it 20th or 29th?
29.
29.
Okay. The cynical side of me, and I'm cynical because I work for the Young Turks, and you're supposed to be cynical and suspicious if you're a good journalist. But the cynical side of me says they kicked the can down the road one time. April 29th is the next court hearing. Certification of the election results is May 5th. After May 5th, there's nothing you could do, correct?
That's the uphill battle. After May 5th, it's going to be difficult. So we're hoping to, we put this in as emergency relief. Our emergency relief was denied because the judge said people can go wait in line for 4 to 5 hours to get a court order. Later on, you're watching CNN and, everyone is disturbed over these long wait lines, Arizona 2.0.
Well, we should specify, because it's accurate. Have you heard anything from Hillary Clinton's campaign about this? Because I haven't.
No. We're keeping this very bipartisan. Everything, that we have is election law, constitutional violations.
No, you said everyone, so I was myself saying her campaign hasn't commented on this voter purge that I know of.
Oh, right. In the media, no.
Well, that's the thing. We're open to anybody. Republicans, if Hillary supporters, we don't care. If you've been purged or if you had a horrible experience, we want to know about it. But for some reason, we're not getting any responses from Hillary people. It's, our concern, obviously, we want a fair election. And, ancillary to that is all the corruption in New York State we want brought to light. But in order to do that, we can't just represent Sanders supporters. We want the truth.
Right.
But for some reason, I'm not getting reports of anybody that was pro-Hillary.
And I also want to get to just you two for a second, because it's very easy when a campaign wins by 16 points, their supporters to say, oh, these two Joe Schmoes and gals, they're just looking for a publicity stunt. They're Bernie supporters, which you are. Let's just put our cards on the table. Not Joe Schmoes, Bernie supporters. But you're also, your law firm, Clark and Fellows?
Yes.
Clark and Fellows does a lot of pro bono work. You were just telling me this morning about representing a homeless individual.
No, he was on not welfare, but
Food stamps
and disability. And basically didn't have enough money to go eat, so he went into the supermarket, stole from the supermarket, and was facing 6 months in prison. Legal aid was telling him that he should just take the 6 months in prison. When Blaire was in court, she saw that happening and didn't want him to go to jail, so we took his case for free. And he did get a misdemeanor, but he didn't have to do any jail time.
So the bottom line is, I mean, this is not a publicity stunt. You do pro bono work. You were doing this pro bono. I won't get into money, but you've already spent quite a lot of dime of your own money on this. Bernie Sanders campaign is not funding you, is not affiliated with you. So bottom line, this for you is not just about Bernie versus Hillary, but it's about
justice.
Right.
It is 100% about. We've already spent over $1,000 on just between legal filing fees and the actual paper.
And that doesn't count paralegals we had come in helping us. So, yeah.
And then court cases that we had to put off to other attorneys to do for us that we had to pay. So, yeah, this has cost us a good deal of money. At
this moment, you're talking to over 5,000 people. There's going to be a lot more that watch after the fact. So this is your chance if people want to support you in this effort. There's no guarantee that we're going to get the provisional ballots counted. There's also no guarantee that doing that will help Bernie Sanders. But it's certainly, if provisional ballots get counted, it's a huge victory because in Arizona, most of them weren't. And we're already seeing stories that Pennsylvania is having similar things like this. California, a lot of other big states. So if there's a victory here in New York, that could kind of be a domino effect for other states that have some shenanigans. So are you looking for more lawyers to help? Are you looking for people to help fund? I mean, what are you guys looking for?
No, I mean, that's important. If there's anybody in New York State who is an election attorney and knows election law, we would like your help on this. I mean, we're general practice. We don't specialize in election law. We're doing our best to do a good job with this, but obviously expertise in this would help. Paralegals, if they want to help assemble these motions, the last point it was stacked yay high, and it took hours and hours to assemble. So definitely we need that. Anybody who's capable of doing legal writing, they could talk to people who are disenfranchised and put in an affidavit form. We need as much help as we can get.
Right. Our goal is basically to light a candle for Bernie and not look at New York as a loss, and so he can move forward in other states, and this can be seen as a victory, and just to bring out all of this disenfranchisement, just throw it out into the world and let everyone know that there was serious voter suppression going on in New York, and Election Justice USA is a great resource for people to move forward in other states and join their efforts. Our team is growing daily, and our members are literally working 24/7 to fight for Bernie Sanders, and they're already moved on to the other states while helping us in New York. We're going to stay on in New York and continue to fight for everyone's right, and their votes to be counted.
Actually, that's a really great point, Blaire, because the say this election's a loss. It's not, because it's brought to light a lot of horrible things that are going on here in New York between conflicts of interest, inability to investigate, voter suppression, and just a host of other things. So Bernie Sanders just keeps bringing, in my opinion, light to a lot of injustices that are going on.
You're getting a lot of comments that how do we help? What's the website? How do we get in contact with you? Should they contact you or Election Justice USA?
Election Justice USA. So anytime we get a message, or you can do electionjusticeusa@gmail.com. Put in the subject.
You gotta talk slowly. You're a New Yorker.
Election Justice USA. We have a Facebook group, and we also have a Gmail account, electionjusticeusa.com. We ask that
the Gmail account is what?
Election Justice USA
@gmail.com. Okay.
And we ask that you put in the subject line, poll worker, legal research, lawyer, in your capacity, and however you can help in the body of the subject. Just briefly tell us what you can do. We really do need all hands on deck, and we also need to look forward to other states. We're getting. Now Rhode Island is being thrown into the gambit, and there are, increasing reports of voter purges in Rhode Island, and California, massive voter purges. So, it's open, it's transparent, and we need to all get involved.
Mm-hmm. And just to kind of put a bow tie on this, I don't know, I'm on no sleep. From April 21st to April 29th, which is today till the next time you're in court, what are you two doing logistically? And are you adding plaintiffs? Are you adding more plaintiffs to the case that have been purged? Are you adding more defendants? What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, what we really want are compelling stories to be our lead plaintiffs. Because when the judge says it's no problem to wait 3 or 4 hours in line for a judge, we want somebody that can show that it was a burden on them, that they, she's not a rich person that has a nanny, but they have to pay a babysitter and take that time and take a bus to go someplace, to go see a judge, to get rejected. And that we need stories. We need stories that can actually ring true with these people that don't actually understand what working class people have to go through. So that's what we
And beyond that, we need to fill the courtroom. We need to put public pressure on this case. We need media outlets following its every move. We need people standing outside with signs. We're going to look in a venue transfer into either Manhattan or Brooklyn. Right now, the case is in Central Islip, Eastern District, New York. We are, within the next couple of hours, we're going to decide how we're going to do that venue transfer, if in fact it will hurt our case or help our case.
So right now it's in Long Island, and you want to move it into New York City?
Yeah, originally when we filed it in Long Island, the news about Brooklyn didn't explode. So when we were filing in Long Island, our major concern was the victims of Superstorm Sandy. A lot of people were being disenfranchised because they lost their enrollment due to the storm. So, but as it turns out, it seems like a lot more of it's happening in the city, so that seems to be the proper venue for it. And I think we're going to have to decide whether we're going to try to move it, whether we're going to file an emergency relief to actually stop the certification of the election. That's another thing we're contemplating doing.
And moving it to New York City, what's the rationale behind that?
The New York City Board of Elections seemed like they were the prime culprit in purging the greatest amount of voters.
And New York City is a federal court.
New York City federal, it would be a federal court in New York City, yes.
As opposed to Long
This is a
Island.
federal court out here also, but it would just be, the venue would be more conducive to this lawsuit.
And one more time, so people can get it. It's electionjusticeusa.com, and it's electionjusticeusa@gmail.com.
And we have a Facebook group, Election Justice USA.
And it's not just about getting people here, it's about getting people to help you, it's about putting pressure. So you mentioned there are upcoming peaceful protests?
Yeah, I believe there's a protest Friday at 11 a.m. in front of Mayor de Blasio's office. I think there's currently a protest underway in front of the Brooklyn Board of Elections. I believe that people are going to be walking from Clinton's Brooklyn campaign headquarters to the Brooklyn Board of Elections on Adams Street. Probably protest into the weekend in upcoming weeks, but we ask that when we have our court date that people show up in droves and bring their signs.
And are you guys updating on your Facebook page where those protests are and all that information?
Not specifically. Those protests that are currently underway that's a separate Facebook page. I don't know the group. We'll certainly post that group on Election Justice USA, but we will update on the status of our lawsuit and when we're going to have a hearing on Election Justice USA.
Great. Thank you guys for taking a lot of time. My final thought is, like anything in journalism, haters are going to hate. So I'm not that concerned about people saying I'm trying to push some, conspiracy theory. I'm not. If provisional ballots end up getting counted and Hillary Clinton wins by 25 instead of 16 as a result, so be it. That's really not my concern. I don't think that will happen, but I think it's more important that over 100,000 people in the biggest city in the planet, any city, if this happens, it's a disgrace, but particularly New York, if you're not going to get a lot of attention on TV news about this, on most big digital sites, we'll keep on it because I do think it's a story. And also, for those quote-unquote election lawyer experts sending me the Twitter hate, if this was a farce, I don't think it would have been dismissed outright. And it wasn't dismissed outright. The judge granted another hearing. So that's that. This video will go up on TYT Politics, youtube.com/TYT Politics. And if you want to help these lawyers out, you could go to Election Justice USA and either offer your services or offer funding. Thanks again, and have a good day.